This is your Wednesday Daily Delivery. I am Michael Rand. Glad to have you guys back with me again for another day. Last show of the week, in case you had forgotten, no shows Thursday and Fridays. I catch a little bit more time off before getting into the grind of August, September, October, November, on and on and on with all that happens in sports and all the great stuff we'll have to talk about. We still have plenty to get to today. Chip Scoggins, Star Tribune columnist, will join me here in a little bit to talk about the big Twins trade deadline. I'll have some thoughts about that in a minute as well. Plus, some early thoughts on Gophers football. They opened fall camp just a couple days ago, and I wanted to get Chip's thoughts on what he's watching for as they start practice. We'll also get to Vin Scully, legendary broadcaster. We'll get to that at the end of the show. Died on Tuesday at the age of 94, a legend. One of those rare people that pretty much universally loved and universally decided as one of the best, if not the best, of all time at his craft. So we'll send you out of the show with a little special Vin Scully treat. But first, what did I miss? I feel like August 2nd, while not a holiday in Minnesota, could now officially be declared Sigh of Relief Day on two different fronts, both literally and figuratively, I guess. Let's start with Kirill Kaprizov, dynamic wild forward who was caught up in this weird and hard to talk about story where he was stuck in Russia, could not leave, and there was some question about his military service. There was some unfortunate things happening with some other players in that regard, and it got to the point this offseason, if you've been paying attention, where it was, at least a genuine concern whether he would be able to leave the country and get back to Minnesota, get back to the United States, and play this NHL season. And, whether that was based on what we now might think of as a false report, or maybe whether that was overblown, for as long as he was not in Minnesota, there was a palpable tension, I would imagine, in the organization and certainly among Wild fans, just because, it was very Minnesota sports for the Wild to, break through, start to have some better teams again, have the best player in franchise history, and to have him stuck in his home country because of, what probably amounts to political maneuverings. But Kirill Kaprizov back in Minnesota as of Tuesday evening. So our Sarah McClellan reporting that per a source. So put that to rest, I guess, at least for now that he is back in Minnesota, now that he's back in the United States. Breathe a sigh of relief. Kirill Kaprizov sounds like he will be, by all accounts, should be plenty ready for the season, should not have a problem on that front anymore. So that is sigh of relief number one, and a big one. However you thought of this along the way, whether you were just kind of, in wait and see mode, not thinking about it too much because it was, July, August, like the season doesn't start for a while. It just felt like the longer it went without a resolution, the more worried you were going to become. And it was getting to that point where it's like, can this just get fixed? And on Tuesday, it got fixed. Speaking of which, Tuesday, Twins made 3 significant trades, adding 2 relief pitchers and a starting pitcher. I think the bullpen help is the one that you will probably focus on the most. They got themselves all-star closer Jorge Lopez. They got Michael Fulmer from the Tigers, and they also added Tyler Mahle, a pretty good starting pitcher from the Reds. I guess they've been taking all the Reds pitchers because they also got Sonny Gray. Those guys did not appear at all on Tuesday, but maybe just their presence and maybe the way that game went underscored how important this is. Twins lose 5-3 to Detroit, use 7 pitchers, including 6 relievers, to get through a 5-3 game. Chris Archer, who, has been relatively effective in a very limited starting role, going, 4 innings usually. He pitched 4 1/3, 2 hits, 2 runs, a very Chris Archer start. But then it takes 6 guys to get through the next 4 2/3 innings. And, some of that's how they're using them. Some of it's this, some of it's that. But when you use 6 relief pitchers and none of them are lights out relief pitchers, you open the door for one of them to falter. And that's what happened. Griffin Jacks had a rough outing, only managed to get 1 out, gave up 3 runs. And there you go. That's your ball game. Twins were up 3-2. And then suddenly they're trailing 5-3, and that's your final score. So that tells you right there how badly these upgrades were needed. 1, to give them 2 more reliable bullpen arms. Hopefully they don't have to have games like this where they're trotting 5-6 relief pitchers out there. Maybe these guys can go a full inning, maybe 2, perish the thought. And by getting Mahle, they give themselves another starter who can work deep into games and might take some of the pressure off of a bullpen that, even with these 2 new additions, has some question marks. So sigh of relief for the Twins, sigh of relief for the Wild, sigh of relief for all those fans who've been saying, get them some help. Twins now, certainly, probably AL Central favorites. Now, White Sox didn't do squat at the deadline. Cleveland barely did anything. The Twins were the team that clearly improved themselves the most. They're going for it. They're trying to win the division this year, which is good. I applaud that, but now we're kind of in no excuses mode. Not to say this is automatic, but, this is a team that's in first place still right now and added the most of any rival in the division. So that tells me Rocco Baldelli should have plenty to work with now down the stretch. Now it's a matter of how they play and how he deploys them as they pursue another American League Central championship.
MGM Wine and Spirits is the choice for savings, service, and a great selection of spirits, premixed cocktails, wines, and of course, ice-cold beers and hard seltzers. With over 30 locations throughout the Twin Cities and beyond, there's an MGM near you. Head to MGMWineandSpirits.com to find a convenient location in your area. Get social. Follow MGM on Facebook and Instagram for all the latest news and trends. Make great moments with MGM Wine and Spirits, your locally owned and operated choice for over 50 years. Save time, save money. Shop MGM.
Let's bring in Chip Scoggins, Star Tribune columnist, now to add to this conversation. Chip talked about it a little bit at the beginning of the show already, but saved most of it for you and I. Very busy trade deadline for the Twins, maybe a little bit more active than I would have thought. Especially the caliber of player. It wasn't like they were in on Juan Soto or, some of the biggest of the big names, but certainly improved themselves Tuesday, with the acquisitions, an all-star pitcher from this year, all-star relief pitcher, Jorge Lopez from Baltimore, someone who, didn't really make it as a starting pitcher, but just turned his career around as a reliever this year. And then obviously getting Tyler Mahle from the Reds, and then Michael Fulmer late in the day before the deadline from the Tigers. What's your taking it all in? Is this more or less about what you expected them to do based on kind of what they've done before and where they stood going into this?
Yeah, I would say kudos Derek Falvey. And to me, it came down to this, Mikey, that you do not go out and pursue and sign Carlos Correa for what essentially is a 1-year deal, be in first place at the trade deadline, albeit their lead has shrunk, even though they've played pretty poor baseball here the last however stretch you want to say.
Right.
And do nothing.
Yeah.
Like if they did nothing, it's like, well, then why did you sign Carlos Correa? I mean, I liked it. Be aggressive. Yes, the Yankees and Astros are superior and they were aggressive at the deadline and they improved themselves. But if you win this division, you're going to have a home playoff series of 3 straight games, 3 straight home games. That's what it is. And so try to maximize what you have with Carlos Correa because he's going to opt out. He's going to test the market to see if somebody gives him a long-term deal. It doesn't mean it can't be the Twins, but he's going to, any player would do that. And so improve your pitching staff. The pitching philosophy this entire year has been baffling to me because you've counted on starters to rehab their careers, and you have kind of this philosophy of they can't go deep.
Right.
Give us 3 to 4 innings. And then you have a bullpen that's not very good and now is overworked. It's like those two things don't match up. And so I like what they did. I mean, getting Lopez is a big time win for them, because if you have him, you're on Duran at the back end of your bullpen and Griffin Jacks, now you can slide it guys who are in those high leverage roles into, less stressful innings. And so you make your bullpen a lot better. They added Michael Fulmer, who had to walk down the hall from the
right.
Imagine that's got to be an odd feeling, right? You're one clubhouse, pack your bags, you're going right down the hall to a new team.
Right.
But you add him to your bullpen. And then Mahle is a middle rotation guy, right? A 3.
Yeah.
Probably
3-4. Yeah. In a rotation full of 3-4s.
In a rotation full of 3. But he's better than some of the guys you're putting out there.
Sure.
And so if you're saying it's Sonny Gray, Ryan, and him, that's better than some of these guys that they're carting out there that are giving you 3 innings and really taxing your bullpen. So I like what Falvey did. I mean, to me, we get so enamored with prospects.
Yes.
Who may or may not ever contribute to your big league ball club. And I'm not saying you have to be reckless with them, but I think too often fans and probably media fall in love with the idea of what prospects might be. When what is the hit percentage on, these guys? If a guy's the 18th ranked prospect in your association, what's the success rate on that guy becoming a contributing everyday ball player for you? So you have to give up prospects to try to win now, and I'm glad they're doing it.
And I saw a stat from the Twins radio account that tweeted it. It was after the win on Monday when Sanchez went 5 innings. It was pretty astounding to me. Sanchez went 5 innings, and that has been a big line for Twin starters to get to this season. When the starter goes 5 or more, and this is through Monday, the Twins are 40-16 this season, and they're 14-32 when the starter does not go at least 5. Now, of course, it's the starter gets knocked out of the game, you're probably going to lose, but it does show that's a very minimum threshold. It used to be at least 5 innings, and these guys, at least that they're getting, Mahle, 19 starts this year, 104 innings. So he's going to go 5 or 6 for you. Same. Yeah. At least they have guys now where you might be able to work a little bit deeper into the ball game, along with a Sonny Gray, maybe a Joe Ryan, and not have to overexpose a bullpen, which now is better than it was 24 hours ago.
Well, and the problem with that too, Mikey, is that Rocco even admitted a couple of weeks ago that they predetermined how long these starters are going to go in before the game.
Right.
So it's not a situation where, okay, this guy's getting beat around or he's, laboring and we got to get him out. It's, we've seen instances where a guy looks strong, but he might be at 79 pitches. Like, well, we got to take him out. Third time through the order, or we determined at 2:00 this afternoon that's all it was going to be, without having without being flexible enough to say, you know what, he looks pretty strong tonight. Let's let him keep going. Our bullpen is overworked or not very good. And so that's just been confounding to me. But the fact that you add, 2, one really good reliever.
Yeah.
That I think Rocco said today that he'll pitch a fair amount of the 9th.
Yeah.
So it gives you options there, whether it's Duran. I don't know if we'll see Jackson that role. Griffin Jackson's been a really nice find for him.
Yes.
And so they got better today. And that's to me, that's the thing. You're in an eminently winnable division.
Yes.
And I think this is going to really energize that clubhouse.
Yeah.
Because guys, if you're leading and you're kind of leaking oil, I guarantee you guys are in there looking at the front office saying, okay, we're going to do something, kind of bolster this, kind of give us some reinforcements here. So that's going to be a shot of life to that clubhouse, and let's see how they respond to it.
Yeah. And another thing that, we should point out in this, Fulmer is a rental. He's a free agent in 2023, a free agent after this season. But
sure.
Lopez under team control through this year and
two more years.
After this, and Mahle also just arbitration eligible next year, so he's under team control for a year and a half. So you got to think about. I think that was important to Falvey and Levine. It always is. It should be to anybody.
It is.
If you're going to give up, if you're going to give something up, you don't want it to just be for 2 months. You'd like it to be for longer. And with the two primary trades in this, the best reliever and the starter that they got that immediately plugs into the rotation. Those guys can be here next year, and in the case of Lopez, here in 2024 as well, as long as he performs well.
Yeah, and that's been Falvey's MO, right?
Yes.
They don't want it to be a rental. And I got to be honest with you, Mike, knowing kind of where you're at with the Yankees, the Astros, that they're on a different plane, that if you're just giving away prospects for 3 months and you think you're going to make a run, I'm not sure that's the best strategy. So if you can work it to where you get a top end reliever like Lopez and you have him for 2 more years after control, I mean, to me, that's an absolute win for you. And that's something that that's important to them to try to get control after, have control over a guy more than just the rest of this season. So it was smart. It was aggressive. We don't typically see the Twins do this. Sometimes they make more like minor moves that really don't move the needle. I feel like this one, particularly Lopez, moves the needle. And the other thing is, Mike, you didn't give up, if you're the Twins, the prospect that you really coveted, right? You didn't give up Lewis. You didn't give up Miranda.
You gave up
absolute fine.
In the Lopez trade, they gave up their number 20 prospect and a few other guys. So, I mean, it's not like they didn't give up, not like they gave up nobody, but yeah, you're right. There's this not like, you didn't look at the list and say, oh, now a couple of the guys that gave up for Mahle are having some nice minor league seasons, but you never know how power necessarily projects. Those are hitters instead of, and maybe they feel like they've got some organizational depth there, but so you got to give up something. But you're right, they didn't give up that one prospect. You're like, oh, we've been hearing about this guy for a long time, and now he's gone.
Well, how much do you think too that Miranda's kind of, what he's shown him here after the tough start changed the narrative? I mean, there was a time where I thought, well, maybe they'll part with Miranda to get a pitcher. Well, to be able to hang on to him, and it sounds like Carlos Correa went to the team and said, do not part with this kid.
Yeah,
he's, he has a chance to be really good. And so that's the other thing. Not only do you get team control after this year, you didn't have to give up one of your most coveted prospects. Right. And now, in saying that, if you would have had to do that, you would have got a higher caliber player in return,
right?
Higher caliber pitcher. So you could say, well, but I also, again, would that move had put him in the conversation where they're going to challenge the Yankees or challenge the Astros? I don't think so. I think there's still too many flaws and still not enough top end talent on their rotation and bullpen to think you're going to be in that conversation. But I, again, I go back to, Mike, I wrote this the other week. We fall in love with, or we're fascinated with this. It's World Series or bust. Well, there is stuff in between there, right?
Yeah,
it's World Series or rebuild. It's like, if they can win a division and get that, 3-game playoff series at home and win that, and then if they get their doors blown off, later on by the Yankees or Astros, but it's still, you're making progress. You've gotten the playoffs. You won a series.
You won a playoff game for the first time since 2004 in that scenario.
Forever. Yeah. So
18 tries.
I don't think you're going to go 0 to 100 in 1 year. It's going to have to be, incremental progress. And so I think that's what they're looking at.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, I think Royce brought up a good point on Monday show. Like they're top prospects. Like a lot of them are either hurt or, not having the best of years right now, or having, relative to expectations, disappointing years. So that probably played into it too. Like what from their organization would a team have picked out in a blockbuster trade? But to be able to kind of work the fringes, get guys who, again, maybe individually, none of these guys moves the needle, but I do think that in combination, when you get two capable relief pitchers and a capable starting pitcher, that to me says, okay, you've made a reasonable, realistic effort to try to win this division. That doesn't guarantee anything, but I think they did their part at the deadline.
And I haven't looked around the Central. I've been kind of busy today, but did anybody in the Central really make moves to bolster their White Sox?
Right.
Cleveland. I think the Twins were the most active, just based on, what we've seen. So they made themselves better. Again, I credit Derek Falvey for realizing that, hey, this is the time to go for it, right? I mean, you have Carlos Correa for, the balance of this season and see what it leads to.
Let's shift gears for a little bit, Chip. Gopher football. They've opened fall, summer, August, whatever camp you want to call it, but getting ready for the season. It's going to be here before we know it. I always feel like Vikings training camp, we kind of count down the days, then Gophers camp opens. Like, wait, okay, yeah, they're doing it too. Yeah. It's like college. It's not this like celebrated thing as much. Maybe it's just me, but as you've kind of, you pay a little bit closer attention to this than I do. As you think about kind of camp storylines or kind of early things to pay attention to, positional battles, whatever it might be, what comes to mind as you think about Gophers football?
Yeah, I mean, it's when I just big picture, when I look at where they are, I still think there's three teams in the top tier in the West. It's, the rivals, them, Iowa, and Wisconsin. And I think the race will come down to those three teams. To me, two big question marks, or just questions. I don't know, they're question marks. They lost a lot of veteran contributors along both lines.
Yeah.
Defense line, they had two NFL draft picks. Azezi and Boye Mafe. They're going to have to replace that. Offensive line, you lost your entire offensive line except for John Michael Schmitz, who's one of the best centers and maybe the best center in college football. So that's a great place to start. But you have new starters coming in there. How do those two groups come together? They recruited well. I've talked to PJ a couple of times. He's excited about what they have there. But to me, the biggest thing is getting Kirk Shiraka back as offense coordinator.
Yeah.
It just did not work with Mike Sanford as the coordinator, particularly related to your quarterback. Tanner Morgan's back. Obviously, Kirk Shiraka pulled something out of him in that 2019 season. He had one of the most historic seasons for a quarterback in Gopher history. He's statistically one of the best quarterbacks in college football, efficiently. Now, you had two NFL wide receivers he was throwing to in Bateman and Johnson. That can't be overlooked. But just bringing him back and reestablishing him with Tanner Morgan, can that jumpstart their passing game, because they just did not throw the ball last year. I mean, they had the fewest attempts in college football, major college football, other than the three service academies. You can't win in the Big Ten one-dimensional. You can beat the bad teams just running the ball a million times and throwing a couple passes, but you do get Mo back from injury. Trey Potts is back from injury. So you have some established guys there, but they have to be more balanced. You have to be able to throw the ball. And I think getting Shiraka back in his offense, let's see if that, if they can recapture some of that magic that Tanner had in 2019.
Yeah, PJ got asked about the notion of offensive balance. I think it was Big Ten Media Day, and I listened in on that. I think Randy Johnson was there from our paper, and he kind of danced around it a little bit. I wanted him to be a little bit more definitive on it, but he's kind of said balance to him is, sometimes there's a game where you got to do what's working to win, or do what you have to do to win. Ideally you kind of have a better run pass mix, but he didn't have the level of urgency or concern that maybe I felt about the 2021 season, but maybe he feels that more internally than he was articulating in that answer.
Well, in so many ways, PJ is new school coaching, cutting edge, kind of, connects with players.
He wants to run the ball, though.
But he is old school.
Yes.
All old. I mean, he'll tell you he came from the Jim Tressel tree. One time I asked him a couple years ago, I was like, we were just talking. I was like, at the end of the game, when you get the stat sheet, what's the first thing you look at? He said time of possession. And I was like, PJ,
right.
he loves time of possession. And I think to a fault, what he does sometimes is, if he knows they can pound a team by running the ball and they can win 17-13 against Bowling Green, he's totally okay with that. If something goes wrong, if they have a couple incompletions early, or if there's, a drop, or Tanner throws a bad pick, it almost is like he's like, all right, we're done with that. We're just going to run the ball and get away, get out of here with a win and be done. The thing I find that I think is a problem, and I talked to some because as season went on last year, and they just weren't throwing the ball, and they throw the ball and then they wouldn't throw it for another 17 plays, and
right,
it was just so sporadic. So I'd talked to a couple of quarterbacks, two who played in major college, one who played in the NFL. I was like, how does that affect the quarterback when it's so inconsistent? Like you need to nurture it. You need to work on your timing. You have to, because then the quarterback puts so much pressure on. It's like, oh, if I don't make this completion, I'm not going to get another chance for another 12 plays. And so to me, it's like you have to nurture the passing game. It can't be just an afterthought. And too many times last year, I thought it was just, they neglected it and it'd be 3rd and 9, or when you don't just flip a switch and have your timing down and can be an accurate passer and accurate, receiver. And so that to me is where they have to be more cognizant of just sprinkling in more. It's never going to be 50-50 with PJ because he loves to run the ball. He loves time of possession and shortening games that way. But I just felt like they fell too much in love with that process and just their passing game was so out of sorts and disjointed last year that, again, you cannot finish with the fewest pass attempts in major college football, not counting the service academies, and think that you're going to win at a really high level. I don't believe, not in the Big Ten.
No, I agree. And I think that's the biggest thing to watch this year. Will it evolve to a slightly better place, at least one that feels more like balance week in and week out, and gives them maybe some cushion, some margins? Because I think what you do when you run all the time is, when it works, it's great. Like if you can score and control the ball and you're up big, you can run the ball, but it cuts down on your margins. Like if a couple little things go wrong, or you miss a short 3rd down, you got to punt. Like this game gets short. The game gets short quick, and against bad teams, they can be in games that they have no business being in if you can't put up some points in a fairly quick manner. So it's it'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, the other thing is like when you have to throw it and you haven't done it all season and you haven't done it consistently, are you going to be able to execute it there? And there's so much pressure on those throws. Yeah. That I just think you have to be able to do it more often. And, this is year number 6 for Tanner, 5 as a starter, right?
Yeah.
I mean, this is, if you can't trust your quarterback in this situation, you're never going to be able to. And we've seen him perform at a really high level. So it's there. And I know he had Bateman and Johnson and those 2 NFL receivers, but it wasn't just all them. I mean, he made some really clutch throws and looked good in Straka's offense. So I'm curious to see what it looks like now that he's back.
Speaking of back, final thought for you, Chip. How worried were you about the whole Kirill Kaprizov in Russia saga, and the resolution of it apparently coming now?
Yeah, it was so murky and so the team didn't want to say much about it. The league obviously told teams not to say anything about the Russia situation and at the draft and guys that are over there. And so it's hard to know like what was exactly going on, but it sure seemed ominous, right? And it sure seemed like this had a potential to be a really disaster for the Wild with, you had the best player in their franchise history and a Russian.
Sure hope he's not stuck in a Russian military camp.
Exactly.
Wow, that's a weird thing to say.
and it's with Putin, you never know, is he playing games? Is he going to use the NHL players as a political pawn for whatever agenda he has? So it was and they're at war, and so it's I know you can't tell players you can't go home. I mean, because that's just, I don't think the league wants to do that, even if they feel that, even if teams feel like, this is probably not the smartest idea to go back there. But I mean, I think there's a lot of reasons to be anxious, and I'm sure the team is very relieved that they have him back here in the United States and presumably, here to stay. I don't know how this, does he?
He can't go back now.
He can't go back, but he does have family there, his parents there, and so that's another complication. But the fact that he's here and not being dragged into mandatory military service or worse when you hear about the fake IDs or whatever was going, that story, which sounds like might not have been true. But the Wild can breathe easy because their best player's back.
Yes. Well, Chip, good to have you on as always. I'm sure we'll talk again soon. And we'll take care.
All right, brother. We'll see you, man.
Good stuff from Chip. As usual, we did not talk any Vikings, but if we had, probably would have got into the Irv Smith injury update. Irv Smith hurt himself earlier this week in practice. Sounds like it must have been a thumb injury because he had surgery immediately. Sounds like they're hoping he will be back for the start of the regular season. But does underscore the depth at tight end. Ben Gessling was on this show just the other day talking about that being something that he would be having his eye on, because beyond Irv Smith, they don't really have a proven pass-catching threat at tight end. So an opportunity for some of the players behind Irv Smith, but also a blow for the Vikings, especially if this is longer than, a training camp preseason type of injury. I'm sure we'll talk about that more today on Access Vikings. Look for that to be released later Wednesday afternoon. Let's finish with the cooler, sad baseball story. Vin Scully, the legendary Major League Baseball broadcaster, worked a lot of other sports as well, died at the age of 94. A life well spent, a life well lived, and like I said at the outset, one of those rare people in this business, in any business really, where he is almost universally recognized as one of, if not the very best, and recognized as, I've read so many, Vin Scully chance encounter stories of people who met him for 10 or 15 minutes and walked away with the impression of a lifetime. That is a huge shadow, a huge just legend of that man, that broadcaster. And I thought I would end today's show with Vin Scully's call of Kirby Puckett's home run in 1991, the World Series Game 6. Jack Buck's call is more perhaps known, but Vin Scully also called that game and did it very well, as he always did. And here is how he called the final play of that game.
And the 2-1 pitch to the Minnesota center fielder is driven to deep left center field. Back goes Keith Mitchell. It is gone. Home run Puckett. And Charlie Lebrand has turned the lights out in the Metrodome.